But it was very funny because in the middle of mid-sentence, the poster just so
All right. It says we're live now. You guys want to check
Sweet.
it?
Yes. It
Let's
looks like
see.
it, since I'm getting an ad now.
Me too. Good sign.
That's a good sign. Aha, yep. Yeah, we're looking good. Excellent.
Yay.
Perfect. Very nice background.
Oh yeah, look at that.
All right. Everyone in the chat, can you hear us okay? Oh, shoot. I feel it looks as if my microphone isn't. What's that?
All right. You sound good to me, but
Sound good to me too.
Hello? I think I know what. Hello? It's better?
hello.
Hello? Hello?
Sounds good to me.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sound good.
Hello,
The chat
hello.
also says that audio is good, so
Okay.
that's a good sign.
It's just I know Discord has its own like auto leveler thing. But if everything's good, I guess we can start. Oh, there was
Excellent.
no, I think we're ready. All right, are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hylian Gamescast, episode 131, I believe. Today we have Capt Bergerson.
Hello.
And returning for the second time is Crybunny.
Hello. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, you're welcome. For those who may not know who you are or didn't watch the previous, why don't you go ahead and let them know what kind of stuff they can find if they check out your streams.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse and Daniel,
you're
for having
welcome.
me back. I'm a variety Nintendo streamer. Started on Twitch about 8-9 months ago. You can find me shiny hunting in Pokemon, or playing Mario Kart with my community, or doing lots of Zelda games. I started streaming Breath of the Wild, so it has a very special place in my heart.
Awesome. So yeah, today we are going to be talking about our thoughts on Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. Any theories or new ideas that we have, thoughts on Aonuma saying no more Zelda games being in development. There was a few people that asked us to give our thoughts on that, and Daniel and I, we were going to do it on the last podcast, but it went on kind of long, so we just kind of skipped it. And then after that, we're going to be talking about Skyward Sword HD, and then we're going to end off with the games that we've been playing lately, whether it's Mario Golf or Breath of the Wild or whatever, and just give our thoughts on it before going into the Zelda mailbag. So before we get started, a big thank you to our Patreon supporters, Lorenzo, David, Super NX64, Manboy Cave, Gus Calvo, Jesse, Shadow to Us, Lovable Christy, Natsu, Justin, Monica, Larulian Sheep, Andrame, Rusty, Mr. Monoclad Metroid, Zoe, Candy, Ashton, BKRS7, Blognar, Chad, Derek, Duran, Jen, SoberX, Brandon, and Ingrid. Thank you all so much for being Patreon supporters. If you want to be a Patreon supporter, you can guarantee to have your topic or question answered at the very beginning of our Zelda mailbag at the end of the podcast. Or if you can't wait until then, you can super chat and we will answer everything as soon as we can. So yeah, starting off, since this is the first time you've come on Crybunny since E3, what were your overall thoughts and reactions to the new Breath of the Wild 2 trailer?
Dude, Trailer, I was like everybody else, so overwhelmed with like joy and happiness. I loved watching reacts and seeing people like literally crying because I think it is such a special game to everybody for different reasons. I'm just so excited about the sky aspect about it all. I also heard that it's going to be a little bit darker too, so I'm like very intrigued on how that storyline is gonna diverge, and I'm really intrigued to see how, because it's the sequel to the game, obviously. So I'm like, okay, how is it going to be its own game versus how much of an extension of the first one is it going to be? What is going to be there? What's not? Do I have to collect 900 Korok seeds again? Like, I'm very intrigued to see how it differentiates from the first one, and how it kind of stays true to it at the same time. So, good stuff.
Awesome. Was there anything in particular that kind of stood out to you when you were watching?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've watched it so many times now, but I'm really intrigued to see what all the different like the colored energies are, like that green energy and like the green blue energy and then the malice and everything. I was watching a breakdown today of the first trailer that came out a while ago, because I feel like I'd watched the most recent one a bunch. I was like, what happened in the first one? Let me remind myself. And when they're going through that little underground cave in the beginning, somebody pointed out that there's a ton of like luminous stone looking stuff there, and then they were going into what luminous stone, the little definition when you click on it in your inventory, and it says it's like some people believe that it contains like the souls of the dead or something, and I'm like, oh, that's a little dark. And like I feel like there was one mission when it was really hard to find luminous stone, and then here it is like all condensed in one area, and you have this creepy Ganon corpse, and it's like, okay, there's like some scary resurrection ritual going on here or something. I don't know. So that kind of stuck out to me as something potentially dark that it could go into. Yeah.
Right. Daniel, earlier we were talking with Rick, or maybe it was yesterday, with the RMFH, and there is an interesting detail about the Great Deku Tree. Do you want to mention that for everyone real quick? For those who may not have noticed.
I think I brought it up last week too, but there's that shot in Hyrule Field in the trailer, and it's actually in the 2019 trailer as well, and somehow we didn't notice for 2 years. So I'm not sure how that got by all of us, because usually I like to think we're pretty good about picking apart these things. But every shot where you can see sort of like Hyrule Castle and everything, based on just where the camera is angled, we should be able to see the sort of upper branches of the Great Deku Tree in the background. And he's just not there. He's just gone. And I'm really wondering, again, maybe this is going to be a bit of a dark game. Like, what happened to him? He's a huge tree. Like, he can't just walk away,
And he didn't die in the first 5 minutes like Ocarina.
That's true as well. He didn't die in the first game, so hopefully he didn't die in the sequel. I don't know, but it's got me very curious, because I kind of liked the role he played in Breath of the Wild. I thought he had this. I thought he was a really interesting character, and Hyrule's got such a I don't know, like a standout horizon, like the skyline of Hyrule. In any direction you look, you can almost tell where you're looking, because it's so distinct at every direction. And now there's like a big, very important thing that's just taken away. So yeah, I don't know what story implications that'll have, or if that means there won't be Koroks. Maybe that's a good thing. But
Please.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. It's got me very curious. I know Rick's. You mentioned RMFH. He's got a video on the way about that as well, which I think everybody should subscribe to his channel and go wait for that video, because I haven't seen it. I just know it'll be good. So yeah,
he was playing through Twilight Princess earlier on a live stream. So we see Link, and really quick, I want to say that most of my faith in the overall Zelda community was restored, because we've seen all of the discussion and debate and arguments and theories and everything on. There's lots of people that believe we've seen 2 playable characters in the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer, that it's like with Link on the ground, and then whether it's Link, Ganondorf, Zelda, a past Link, a Zonai, whoever in the sky flying around. And I was curious, so I posted a poll in the community on YouTube, and most, like I would say 75% of all the votes, I can't really go check right now, but most of the votes just agreed that, yeah, it was Link. It wasn't anyone else
Yeah.
And then there's a few people that brought up, why would it be someone else? It's the same quiver holding the arrows. It's the hair's the same length. He's able to basically, it's just a new outfit that he's wearing. Like in almost any game, you start out with one outfit, and then, you know, Breath of the Wild, a big thing about that was being able to basically change and customize all of your outfits. And with each mask or hat or anything, Link's hair would change. So I was glad to see that a lot of people came back around on that.
I feel like the people talking about the hair thing, how they're like, well, his hair's longer, so it's a different character. And I'm like, you've never had long hair, have you? Because if you have, I've had long hair. Imagine there was a day where I had shoulder length hair. That's a true story. And I will tell you, if you tie your hair up in a ponytail versus if you just have it like loose and flowing, it looks longer down than it will if you just have it tied up. And if you think about even just looking at Link's model, how far the ponytail dangles down versus that trailer shot where his hair is flowing in the wind, it's clearly just he just let his hair out. Let his hair down. Link deserves to let his hair down sometimes. So
yeah. Cry Bunny, have you seen any of the theories about the Link in the Sky being a second playable character, whether it's Ganondorf, Zelda, or whoever?
Yeah, I've seen and heard a couple. I was chatting with my like community earlier today, and people were saying that there was one theory out there that maybe when you're down in that cave and you maybe have a chance of either saving, because Zelda falls and then Link grabs her hand. And then there's also an image of that kind of green hand grabbing Link's hand. So maybe it's like you get to pick who you save and you get to maybe play as Zelda or play as Link. And I mean, in that scene also, Zelda has that short hair. I love that we're talking about like hair tonight.
right.
My day job, I'm a beauty editor, so I talk about like hair and makeup all the time anyway. So I'm like, this is my area. But yeah, like she has like a short bob, same kind of length as Link's. And there's this one scene of both of them from the back, and like Link's hair is kind of half up, her hair is down, but like they look very similar. And people were saying that like, you know, it's easier to animate shorter hair, so maybe they cut her hair so that you can make it easier for the animators when they animate her running all around Hyrule. But I don't know how much I believe it yet. I just feel like it's Link. I just feel like it's just Link, but I don't know. I think that was like there's a defense to be made there, I think.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that was saying it was Zelda, and recently over the past week, there's been a lot of people commenting on the videos saying, why would it be Zelda flying around in the sky? If it was, then her chest would be shown to everyone, because it's like it only covers up like one side of the chest. And
right, yeah,
I was like, yeah, that does make sense. I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think that would be Zelda. But
remembering that this is Nintendo that made this game, I doubt there will be any wardrobe malfunctions involved or anything like that. So
yeah. So the topic that I was wanting to go into with Breath of the Wild 2 was on the podcast we've talked a lot about stuff that we would like to see in Breath of the Wild 2, and we may have mentioned this a while back, but to go into it again since the trailers come out, what kind of stuff in Breath of the Wild that would you like for them to keep and carry over to Breath of the Wild 2, and what are a few things that you would like to see them get rid of? Like earlier Daniel mentioned Koroks. So one common thing that a lot of people would get rid of is having to find 900 Koroks all over again. So yeah, starting with you, Cry Bunny, if you can think of any.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Daniel. Koroks, let's get rid of him. Don't need him. I never understood that. But something I would want to keep. I know there's been a lot of discussion about like weapon durability and maybe keeping that or getting rid of that. At first I didn't like it, but then when I think about it more, I'm like, yeah, it helped me like use different weapons. Otherwise you would just use the same Lionel, you know, sword, whatever, all the time. Like it helps you kind of diversify the armor that you actually use. So I kind of want to keep that. And then I was also thinking, because now that we've expanded to the sky, something that I love is the hero's path, just kind of like seeing where I've been and what I've been doing. I am very curious to see if they keep that, how they will do that with the sky and the different levels, because it'll be interesting I don't know, when you add that whole vertical aspect, is there another, I don't know, how do you see the hero's path that way? So
Hmm.
for 100%ing it, I know a lot of people have like very intense grids of going exactly everywhere, and their hero's path is just like every possible place on the map. So I don't know. I'm intrigued to see what that could be.
All right.
Funny you mentioned Hero's Path because I use that so often as
Yeah,
well. Like
it's so
especially if you're trying
helpful.
to, yeah, it's so good. Hmm. Sorry, Jesse, what were you
Oh,
gonna
no, I
say?
was going to ask you what were some things that you would like to see Nintendo get rid of or change, and then some things that you would like to see them keep.
Okay. There's some difficulty scaling with a lot of the enemies that I feel like could be changed. And I like Stalkoblins when they pop out, they're more just a nuisance than anything else. They're not like difficult enemies. And I found I actually enjoyed doing the Divine Beasts. A lot of people really didn't like them, but I thought they were really fun challenges. But they were more difficult or more challenging on the puzzle aspect side of things. Whereas the enemies you'd fight in them were typically very weak enemies. And I found that outside of the Divine Beasts, just in the world, the enemies would scale pretty appropriately. Like as you progress through the game, you'd end up encountering harder enemies, which is sort of like an algorithm that the game has to have because you could go in any direction, right? So I thought they did that pretty well. But then within the Divine Beasts and the shrines, um, almost all the time they were really weak enemies, and when they weren't really weak enemies, they were those tests of strength that were already kind of preset. You know what I mean? But specifically the Divine Beasts, a lot of the time it was like a one of those mini guardians that was like only 100 HP or only 13 HP, and you could just like swat them aside and move on, right? And it's like, I don't know, it's like almost like, what's the point of having these guys in here if they're not an actual challenge? Since these are kind of our dungeon stand-ins, and that stood up to me more now because I'm playing through all these older Zelda games and like doing all these actual difficult combat challenges. So something I would like to see changed, I think, it would be that, just like the difficulty scaling for enemies. Divine Beasts, a lot of the time, whatever form of dungeon we have in this game. I feel like I over-explained this point, but I hope I made sense.
You're good.
Yeah. But as far as something to keep, I actually also think the weapon durability. I'm gonna side with Bunny on this because I think it's a really I don't know. I really like the system. I acknowledge that it's not a perfect system, but I also feel like that like weapons are common enough to find. It's that I found myself having to intentionally break weapons or just ditch them frequently. So having a weapon break was never really that big of a deal for me, I guess. It was always feeling like you're cycling through things, and it kept a lot of things really interesting, but also there's an element of strategy with it, because when you encounter maybe a group of enemies, you have to decide like what weapon are you willing to break here and part with. What's something that you think will be effective against that? Is it maybe an elemental weapon or not? That kind of thing, right? So I actually really liked the system they had. I think maybe there's room for improvement. Maybe you could repair certain weapons. I know people talked about blacksmith being an option. That would be cool. I think the Master Sword should maybe not run out of batteries so often. Especially, I felt like Trial of the Sword should have made it so the Master Sword never ran out of power, because you already went through that huge challenge, like something like 70 floors of combat. I don't remember how many it is, but the Trial of the Sword is not easy. It's a hard thing, especially if you're doing Master Mode, right? So that would have been something that could have been maybe altered. But in the end, like honestly, I have it's not a deal breaker for me the way the system is. So yeah. Anyways, I've talked too much. Sorry, Jesse. You go ahead now.
You're good.
Tell us your things.
So I don't know if this is cheating, but one of the things that I thought of that I would love to see carried over to Breath of the Wild 2 isn't necessarily from, like, it's in Breath of the Wild, but it's used in Age of Calamity, the DLC, where you can use the Guardian legs as like a grappling hook whip thing. And it reminds me of the reason that they said they took out the claw shot or the hook shot from the original Breath of the Wild, because it made Link kind of OP to where he could hook onto anything and basically turn him into Spider-Man. And I thought Age of Calamity did an interesting take on the grappling hook, because if you think about the way that the Guardian's legs are, they do extend and come back, and their feet, or whatever you want to call them, are like claws. So it is kind of like a weird techie claw shot. And just as any other weapon that you get from enemies, and then the Guardians themselves are able to tear up easily or break easily, I think it would be interesting to have that, maybe not to pull you to places, but if you could use it to like steal a shield or a weapon or something from the enemies, especially the Lynels. I'm having flashbacks to you trying to fight the one Lynel on top of next to Zora's domain over the banana tree in yesterday's stream.
My stream yesterday. I died a couple times to that guy. Yeah, but that was that was a fun one. But yeah.
So I'm just hoping that they'll be able to carry over some unique and interesting ideas, or add new and interesting ideas like that, from stuff that has been in the game before, but no one really thought about using in that way, like the Guardian legs. And then something that I would not like them to bring back is all of the shrines. Like, I would much rather it be like Twilight Princess or some of the other Zelda games, to where instead of shrines taking you underground, if there are, which we already know that there's at least some sort of cave system underground, but I would like it if you go in and it's just like a natural cave or mini dungeon or whatever. Like in Twilight Princess, there's a bunch of them to where you can just blow up a boulder or something, and it goes inside of a giant hill or a mountain or something, and it acts like a little mini dungeon. And the one that I always think of is in Twilight Princess, on that one, I think it's on the one path that looks similar, or it could be the one that takes you to the Forgotten Village or Hidden Village. I forgot the name of it. But there's one there that you have to put on the iron boots, and you can drop down and the magnet pulls you, and there's like lava down below. And it's like the same size as a small shrine. And I think things like that, to where they're naturally implemented into the areas, would be really good. But I don't know if I would be able to go through 100 or hundreds more of the different shrines that they have. That's all the same color and same enemies and same puzzle variations, and it's just, like, I don't know, it would be too much for me. So I hope that we do not get that, although a lot of them were really cool and interesting, but I would just like it more if they were like past Zelda games, which is something I think a lot of people would like. And maybe they'll do something like that, where maybe like the different dungeons and stuff are the islands in the sky, which made me think maybe that's where the Deku Tree disappeared to. Maybe he rose up like everyone else. I think that would be interesting. Yeah.
Cool.
So there's a bunch of Skyward Sword HD trailers that came out today. So it made me think, before we get on to the next topic, is there anything from Skyward Sword, or I don't think Cry-Bunny's played Skyward Sword, have you? All right,
I haven't yet. I will in 2 weeks.
So is there, if you can think of anything that you've seen from the trailers, or what you do know from Skyward Sword, and you can think of that. But the question is there anything from Skyward Sword that you would like to see carried over to Breath of the Wild, since we do know there's going to be islands in the sky and flying, or not flying, but the paragliding and everything. So, while she thinks, Daniel, do you have anything in mind that you would like to see carried over from Skyward Sword?
The beetle
The beetle
item. It's it's basically like having a drone, right? That you can fly around, and it's just a really great item in Skyward Sword. There's I think Skyward Sword does a really good job of keeping it useful throughout the entire game. Like, it's one of the first items you get, and they've managed to find uses for it throughout the whole game, which is like one of the areas where, say, Twilight Princess sort of fell short. A lot of its items had very limited utility. Like, you would use it in that dungeon that you found it, and then only like maybe a couple times after that, and then that was it. Whereas the beetle was used very well, I think, throughout the whole adventure, and in some interesting ways, like not just for scouting out things, but you could like pick up and drop things with it, and yeah, it's just a really cool item. And they had kind of plans for a similar item that was going to be a rune in Breath of the Wild that was supposed to like detach from the Sheikah slate and then fly off, and then they cut it, so it never ended up in the game. But it makes me think that maybe they'll re-implement it, or maybe not the exact item, but something similar to that would be cool. But especially if you've got all these different sky islands, it'd be cool to have something like that where you could go and kind of like scout out the area, look around a bit, but you're not actually going there and fighting the enemies. You're just looking around and seeing like what's they're like scouting ahead of time, and then maybe trying to figure out how to get there or something like that, right? So yeah, I just think there's some cool things they could do with it that way. So
Yeah, especially if there's because we've seen some, like, aside from mountains and large hills, when you're running around Hyrule on the ground, you can kind of see everything unless it's blocked. But with this,
Thank you!
what was that? I heard tingle. I'm sure everyone else heard tingle as well. No, it was Beetle. I'm sorry.
what?
What just happened?
I'm confused.
That was interesting. Okay. I heard the thank you that Beetle does, which when I'm streaming a game is the thing to let me know that there is a notification, but I don't know what it was this time, so I'm just scared now because I heard Beetle say thank you and I don't know what it was for.
I have no idea.
Anyways, what I was saying is with Beetle, everything is like with Beetle, please. You can tell what I'm thinking now. With the islands in the sky, it's like you could be on a lower island and look up and look around and see a bunch of islands around you, but you couldn't see what is actually on those islands. So before you use something like 𝐓𝐷𝐼𝐴 or another ability to jump up and fly towards one of these islands, you could use that to be able to see which direction you want to go to or which island you would want to go to. And to me, it seems like that was something that they would have had in the game if it would have just stayed on Wii U, but since it was switched to the Wii U and the Switch, and they wanted to keep both versions kind of the same, they got rid of that idea. But it would be interesting if they re-implemented it. But Crybunny, have you thought of anything that you've seen from Skyward Sword that you'd like to see return for Breath of the Wild 2, or just a new feature or gameplay mechanic in general that you'd like to see? Oh, yeah. Nintendo Prime gave a $5 super chat. Does he have a message, Daniel? Can you see?
Oh yeah, sorry there. Yeah, Nintendo Prime chat at $5 said, "Let me out of your damn basement so I can make videos, bro." Damn. He actually set up in the chat earlier that he was locked in Jesse's basement. So
but I'm locked in your basement.
That's what I said. If Jesse's locked in my basement and Nate is locked in Jesse's basement, how deep does this basement go?
Yeah, no one's there to feed Nate. I mean, I only get a shoe, but at least it's something. But yeah, Crybunny, sorry.
Yeah, no worries at all. Well, I know that some like gaming abilities in Skyward Sword were actually used then in Breath of the Wild, like or like first introduced in Skyward Sword, like the stamina wheel and being able to upgrade your armor, and also that was, I think, the first time he uses like a cloth as like a paraglider. So it was like a predecessor to the paraglider, I guess. And I was watching a breakdown, and they said that it's still the same paraglider from the first one, but there's like 2 ribbons running behind it, so maybe that will help us like navigate the winds or figure out which way the winds are going. Like, I'm very curious to see how we're actually going to navigate the skies as we are like uncovering the map. We don't know where we're going, so maybe we'll be like charting winds more now. I don't know, but that could be something cool. And yeah, I know that there's a lot of motion controls in that one, which I don't know how people felt about that. I feel like I don't usually like motion controls, but I know how in this one, or in the remastered one, you don't necessarily have to use the motion controls. But maybe they're like trying to do justice for the motion controls, and there's like some really exciting motion control that you're gonna want to do. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't really thought about a reason for the like the two tail things coming off of the paraglider, but maybe it is something similar to Wind Waker, where the direction of the wind was able to help you out, or you had to be able to move the wind. So if they did something like that again, to where, like if you're flying against the direction the wind's blowing, then you're not really going to go far. But if you fly in the direction the wind is blowing, then you'll be able to glide like 2 or 3 times as far as you would otherwise been able to. So that would be a really interesting thing that they could do. For me, I'm not going to say loft wings because I've said it too many times before, but I will say Skyward Sword has a blacksmith that's able to upgrade or fix and repair items and stuff for you. So if they brought something like that back to where you can take all of this stuff that you've collected and give it to the person, or just pay him a certain fee, and he make a weapon or armor that you have, a shield or something, more durable or stronger, then I think that would be a great addition that they could do from Skyward Sword. What about you, Daniel? Is there anything else that you can think of before we go to the next topic?
I was just thinking about the Tinker Shop thing that you mentioned, and it was pretty limited in Skyward Sword because he could only fix shields, and the like the item upgrading he would do kind of made more sense for that game because, like, for example, he would upgrade your bow, but you would only be able to find one bow in the whole game. There was one bow ever to have, so it makes sense that you'd be able to upgrade it throughout the game. But in Breath of the Wild's sort of system, you don't necessarily need to upgrade a bow because it's probably going to break and then you're going to find a new one. Do you know what I mean? Unless it's a character that could also repair its durability. The only thing that now that you've got my brain thinking about that, honestly, in Skyward Sword, like your shield takes damage. It actually gave you a durability gauge on screen of how damaged your shield was before it would break, and that was not in Breath of the Wild. And I would like to know how close to breaking my things are. You know, so even just something like that, just an indicator or something. Even if it's not always on screen and you have to pause to see it, I don't care. I would just want to be able to know how damaged those things are. Because I think that would be, I don't know, that just would make the most sense to me. So it's a really minor thing, but like the game has a way of tracking it. It just doesn't show us for some reason. So yeah, that's all. That's very tiny minor thing.
No, you're good. There was actually, it reminds me, in the concept artwork, there is concept art. And I think even in some of the early gameplay, there is a meter on the shield or something. Right? Am I mistaken, Daniel?
I don't think it's any gameplay, but very, very early development screens, I think. Like it's really early development screenshots that showed it, I think. But it was also like Link was inside like some kind of temple or something that looked completely different than anything that's even in the final game. So
yeah,
who knows how early in development that was. So yeah.
And let me think. Is there anything else? I was going to say
Beetle an airship shop again.
Oh, an airship? Oh yeah.
It's a flying shop.
Yeah, that would be perfect for
the Sky Islands. Now,
I hope we're not ruining too much for you, Crybunny.
No, I don't know what's going on.
Well, we're not saying anything. Yeah, we're not saying anything too spoilery for the story and stuff. It's just like generic shop stuff. So.
Yeah, but Beetle's air shop was amazing, you know, because it's bicycle powered, and he dropped the ladder down to you if you rang the bell. And
Mhm.
this, I don't know, it was very charming. You know what I mean? And I love Beetle, even though he's just got a backpack in Breath of the Wild, and he somehow is always at every stable.
Yeah.
Um, but if we're exploring all these sky islands, these skylands, if you will, um, I don't know. It would be cool to see him up there with his little sky shop, his air shop. Sorry.
I was gonna say it would be. I liked the conversations with the one girl in the shop that had the huge crush on Link. There was some of the stuff that she said that was really funny, but then thinking about it, there's already Paya. Is that her name in Breath of the Wild that already has a huge crush on Link?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, Paya, it was granddaughter.
Right. So the next topic is something that I was wanting to make a video on, but I thought we could quickly go over it on the podcast. And there were some other people that messaged me earlier and yesterday and commented on the tweet thing. Anyways, our thoughts on what's going to happen with the Zelda series for the rest of the year. We've made a bunch of videos about Ocarina of Time specifically coming and reported on other news and reports of Twilight Princess and Wind Waker or other Zelda games that people had mentioned was going to be coming out. But the one that we've been getting behind is Ocarina of Time. And it was kind of funny when, like last week, someone messaged me and was like, or not messaged me, but tweeted and said something about, I thought you said Twilight Princess HD was coming to Switch or E3, and it didn't. And I had to correct the person and say that we never said Twilight Princess or Wind Waker was going to be coming, or any game was necessarily going to be coming at E3. The only game that you weren't behind it for a while, but I think ever since February, I was behind the idea of Ocarina of Time coming, and I've given my reasons in past videos, and that's the game that I've been behind coming. And what I've been saying is that not necessarily it could be for E3, but judging by the way that fans have been reacting to Skyward Sword being a full-priced game and the amiibo being more expensive than a normal amiibo, and it being instead of a remake like Link's Awakening, which was completely revamped and had new graphics and everything, it is more akin to like Twilight Princess HD whenever they remade it, except from what we know, Skyward Sword doesn't have any real new additional features other than the traditional controls being optional. So there could be new bonus dungeon like Twilight Princess HD gave us, but we don't really know. So with that, a lot of people have been really negative towards it, to put it lightly. And I've been saying that Nintendo is probably waiting until Skyward Sword HD releases before they begin to announce any other Zelda remakes. And because with a game like Ocarina of Time, which is at the top of a lot of people's favorite video games, not just Zelda, if most people had the choice and they've already pre-ordered Skyward Sword, they would probably cancel that pre-order or switch it over to Ocarina of Time to have that game instead. So it would be the better business decision for Nintendo to hold off until Skyward Sword releases, or like the month after Skyward Sword releases, which is what we've been saying. So, and then there was the big report that people quoting 𝐴𝐿 when he said that there are no plans for making any other Zelda games or something like that for the rest of this year. So do you want to talk about that a bit and kind of go over what we always say about when 𝐴𝐿 or someone says something?
Right. I mean, you covered most of it already. We've been saying that just so that they don't compete with themselves or detract from Skyward Sword sale, that we didn't think they would announce any other games before Skyward Sword came out, right? Give that game a chance to sell. Otherwise, if you release too many Zelda games at once, then you you're splitting your audience. People are going to buy one or the other, not necessarily both. Some of us will buy both. I would, but that's not the case for everybody. So just to ensure that Skyward Sword does the best it can, you don't make it compete with something else that is the fans that's within the same fan base, right? But keep in mind as well, I mean, Aonuma did say kind of like, oh, this is it for now. These are all our planned campaigns, I think is all he said. And that's kind of loosey goosey PR fluffy wording. Whenever Nintendo says we have no plans for this or whatever, like keep in mind Nintendo has a marketing department that determines when they can announce things, etc. They're not just going to just let it slip or whatever in like especially not a scripted presentation like E3, right? So just because now they're saying this is it for now doesn't mean that's going to be it forever. They might come out swinging with something later on in the year or very early next year, who knows. But I don't think that I don't think we can necessarily take Aonuma's statement at face value, because Nintendo just has a history of kind of saying, no, this doesn't exist, and then it actually did. Case in point, numerous games. Hold on, we got a super chat. But Majora's Mask 3D would be the case, like my favorite example, where they said for years that it didn't exist, and then it did exist after all. They just didn't announce it yet, right? So, anyways, we got a super chat. I'm not sure which currency this is actually. MX. I'm sorry if I'm ignorant. If I'm an ignorant person. Do you know what currency that is?
Mexico?
Is it?
Yeah, Mexican pesos, it says. I typed it in on Google. It looks like a lot. It says it comes out to about $25. So I do not owe this guy my soul.
You don't owe. Okay, that's fair. Still, no, thank you,
Yes,
Hylian
thank you.
Racer, for the super chat. Super amazing. Hylian Racer said, I read a theory where they say that in Breath of the Wild 2, we are going back to where everything began, that maybe that's the reason why the release of Skyward Sword on Switch. What do you think? I don't think there's time travel personally, but if that's where we're getting at it, I think they're releasing Skyward Sword because it's the 10th anniversary of Skyward Sword, and it's the only 3D Zelda game that hasn't gotten a remake yet. And I think there will be thematic ties to it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there will be direct story consequences between the two games. But that's just me. I could be very wrong, and I wouldn't mind being wrong either. So yes.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I think we'll see a few strong connections, because Nintendo always seems to take influences from other games that they're working on at the time. Like, whenever they were remaking Wind Waker in HD, and they had Breath of the Wild being worked on at the same time, there's the interview where Aonuma or Miyamoto was asked why there are Koroks in the game hidden everywhere, because they released artwork where originally it was finding like fake Master Sword pedestals, and there were Kokiri. In fact, there was a Kokiri champion instead of the Revali as the champion. And he was asked about why there are Koroks in the final game and what changed, and he said basically that the Korok models in Wind Waker HD looked really good, so they basically just copied and pasted and tweaked them a little bit for Breath of the Wild, and it worked out well because you could just tweak them a bit and come up with tons and tons of various designs that would all work for finding the different Koroks and stuff. And I think it'll be like that. They were working on Twilight Princess HD, and then we found out that amiibo would allow you to play alongside Wolf Link, and I think it'll be something similar, to where it'll just take all of these little influences from Skyward Sword HD to Breath of the Wild 2. Yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Yeah, the Aonuma thing. Did you finish what you were going to say? You said your favorite...
Yeah, I think we got the gist of it.
Yeah. You said your favorite example was Majora's Mask?
Majora's Mask 3D for the 3DS, yeah, because, I mean, Ocarina of Time 3D came out, and then people were asking in interviews and etc. And they're like, when is Majora's Mask 3D gonna be a thing? And they were like, no, no, we're not making that game. And then they actually were the whole time, but
Yeah.
they weren't ready to announce it yet, right? But like just because something, like these people they're under NDA, right? They have contracts. So if he was just like, yeah, actually, then he would lose his job. So he's gonna say no.
Yeah.
So that's just how it is. Yeah.
Some other quick examples before we move on to the next thing is they did the same thing with Skyward Sword, which we know is releasing now. He was asked about Skyward Sword a lot after he teased it, and every time he said there's no plans for it, it would be impossible to make a version of Skyward Sword without motion controls, all this stuff. And it turns out the entire time he was working on Skyward Sword HD. They kept denying the Nintendo Switch Lite, and then it was announced. They said that there was going to be just the one version of the Nintendo 3DS, that it was already perfect the way that it was designed. There's no reason to make a second version of the 3DS, and then they came out with like 5 different versions with the 3DS XL, the new 3DS, the 2DS, all of those. And there's plenty of other examples as well, like the Wii U, or no, the Switch not being a successor to the 3DS or the Wii U, that it was going to be a third system and have its own path. And then soon after the Switch came out,
they on the Wii U's grave though. So
and then
if we're being honest,
they basically, like a few months after the Switch came out, they just canceled 3DS and the Wii U, and apparently even told Nintendo employees to not mention the 3DS, just to focus on the Switch when people brought it up. So yeah. But moving on to the next thing is Skyward Sword HD. So there's a bunch of trailers that came out in Skyward Sword HD. Is there any additional features, sort of like what we talked about with Breath of the Wild 2? What kind of changes or additional features would you like to see? And since you haven't played through the original game, Bunny, what are your overall expectations or hopes for Skyward Sword?
I think as somebody who like kind of started at Breath of the Wild and then going kind of back, I'm gonna be like trying to climb walls and like explore the whole world. It's gonna be a little bit challenging for me to kind of rein that in. So I'm excited to see how I kind of like de-adjust, to the new restrictions and stuff. But yeah, just I want to get more of the story and the lore and hear more about that. I think it'll be fun to go back to the beginning of the story here. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
All right, I think playing through Skyward Sword, there'll be a bunch of things that you'll come across, and it'll just like have a little moment in your brain and be like, oh, and then they'll just like a line connects one thing from Skyward Sword to Breath of the Wild.
I'm sure.
Especially if you go back to play Breath of the Wild after Skyward Sword. And what you mentioned about trying to climb stuff and not being able to is actually something that happened to me after playing Breath of the Wild. I remember I went to the game I tried playing after Breath of the Wild was Final Fantasy 15 on PlayStation 4. And anytime that I would like come across a rock or a hill or something that's in my way, instead of going around it like you do in like 99% of games, I just try to climb over it. And I'm like, why isn't it climbing? So it kind of ruined playing other games for a while.
That was me playing Horizon. Jeez, I really like that game, but I started Horizon Zero Dawn like last year only, right? So I was very late to the party. And I was like, why can't I climb this thing? Why can't it's a very open world, but it's like for some reason you can only climb the rocks that are painted yellow. I don't get it. So anyways.
Yeah.
Good game still. Definitely definitely a struggle. Yeah. I'm like, why I want to go there. Why can't I just go there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Struggle's real. So sorry, Jesse, I totally cut you
No,
off,
it was your turn. Talk about stuff that you like, changes or additional features or something that you'd like to see. Because they keep coming out, like they released 3 or 4 different trailers today, which is crazy. All for Skyward Sword.
Some of them are really nice. There was one that was like really. Oh, you're the one that sent me that, Jesse.
Yeah, I sent it to both of you.
Yeah, that one was gorgeous. It's a beautiful trailer. Like they had the actor who like jumps. It was all like green screen and stuff, but like they jumped, and just the way it was animated was gorgeous. But Yeah, I mean, I actually think this is going to be a thing. I've talked about this on a previous episode already. But Fi, who's your companion character in Skyward Sword, um, I love Fi. She's a great character. You get very emotionally attached to her, but she talks too much, and there's just no way around it. At least in the original version. But there was actually a thing on I think it was the Nintendo UK website where they had a posting about the game, and one of the features they listed were quality of life improvements, which included the motion controls, and then one of the things they said um, was alterations to the game's tutorials and overall guidance, which makes me think that they made maybe a setting or like an option or just reduced it entirely. Um, Sort of the hints that Fi gives you because as great a character as Fi is, she's just like very heavy-handed with the hints. And it's like, I don't need this. I'm literally walking towards the thing you want me to go to. You don't need to give me a hint to go there. Like, you stop. I want to just go. Which is something in Breath of the Wild where just the fact that I wasn't being told where to go constantly was a breath of fresh air, if you will. So that's something I think that they're easing up on. I think that's going to be altered in this game. But maybe I'm wrong. But I hope that's something that they would take into consideration, because I think that was a big part of fan feedback 10 years ago when the original one released, right? So yeah. Otherwise, the game is really fun. So there's really good combat and really fun puzzles and items and stuff. So yeah.
Just to touch on it really quick, do you think there are any chances of like a new bonus dungeon or anything like they did with Twilight Princess?
I was trying to think of that the other day actually, because I was thinking like, where would you put it? Because say for Breath of the Wild, its world is so big and open. You could stick a dungeon pretty much anywhere in that game, and it would be fine. It would fit there. But Skyward Sword's world is very tightly knit in its design and its layout, and a lot of the progression sort of naturally funnels you in certain directions to get you to go to whatever dungeon you're trying to go to, whether it be just like natural barriers like walls or cliffs that you can't climb, etc., right? And it sort of funnels you in the right way, and that works great for the progression style that Skyward Sword employs. But because of that, I was like, where would you even fit in an optional or bonus dungeon or something that new to this game? And then I realized after humming and hawing about it for a while, of course, in the sky, because in Skyward Sword there's all these floating sky islands, and most of them are completely inconsequential. Tiny little islands with not very much to do on it, or a few blades of grass, or like literally a small sky island with one Octorock on it, and that's it. And so, like, honestly, you could just shove a new Skyland in there somewhere, and I think that would be great. So but I don't know if they would do it. Twilight Princess's HD's like bonus dungeon that they added was pretty limited. Like, there wasn't even technically a dungeon entrance. You just warped there with an amiibo, and it was kind of like a really bare bones dungeon. It was just like almost like Trial of the Sword. It was just like combat gauntlet, right?
Yeah. This is the wolf version of the one
of the Cave of Ordeals.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So it was basically like a copy of a dungeon that was already in the game, except you had to be in wolf form for it. So I would hope that if they implemented it, they would do better than that. like if you play Link's Awakening, the color dungeon is the best example of like because in the original version, Link's Awakening, it there was no color dungeon. It didn't exist. And then when they came with the DX version, and then it was still there for the Switch version. How dare you? They added this new bonus dungeon, and they found like a good spot to like put a proper dungeon entrance in the world without it feeling like weird. And they put a puzzle around it, and then it's actually a really large dungeon, and there's a lot of really fun puzzles and stuff, and it worked great. It was great, and I don't think they've done anything as good as that as far as adding like new dungeons in remakes since then. And when did Link's Awakening come out? That was like 19.
Oh yeah, I was thinking of the remake.
And the DX. When did the DX version come out? Like 92 98, 96, something like that.
I don't know.
I
I
can't
can
remember
check
the
really
exact
quick.
year. I also I guess I have a computer and a
Oh,
phone
okay.
right in front of me, right? So I guess I can check.
But yeah, Link's Awakening DX
Uh,
got the color dungeon, and then in the actual remake, they gave us a second bonus dungeon, which was basically create your own dungeon. So that was cool.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it was really cool. But oh no, this says 93. That was the original version. Do better, Wikipedia. Do better. I'll find it here.
All right. While he looks for that,
90, it was 98.
98. Okay.
There we go. Yeah. All right. Sorry.
Oh,
Solved.
you're good.
Solved. Go ahead, Jesse.
Oh, were you
gonna
done?
Say something. Yeah, I'm done.
I was going to switch to the next topic. If we're done with that. All right. So there was some people have been asking lately what games that we've been playing and if we have any recommendations and stuff. And we used to have this topic either at the beginning or as the last question before the mailbag, where we would kind of go over the games that we've been playing since the last thing. And there was actually a few times when some people would actually go out and buy some of the games that we had recommended. So I thought maybe we could do that again, especially since people asked earlier. And then when I was asking Crybunny what kind of topics she would like to talk about or games, she mentioned Mario Golf, which fits perfect into this since that's the game that she's been streaming lately. So Crybunny, starting with you, you mentioned Mario Golf. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
And what other games aside from Mario Golf have you been playing?
Yeah, so I was very excited about Mario Golf and I have been playing it and I really like the speed aspect of it. I think it adds something kind of new and fun. You don't just hit it and kind of appear somewhere else. You're kind of constantly invested in the game. I keep trying to like chill and then I'm like, oh my god, wait, no, time is running out. So I think it engages you in a nice fun new way. And I've been doing the adventure mode right now, which actually reminds me a lot of Sword and Shield adventure mode. So if anybody out there is playing Sword and Shield Pokemon, enjoyed the kind of casual playthrough of that, it reminded me a lot of that, just like the story mode and the way that the story progresses from there. There's a lot of similarities. I haven't played the like battle rounds yet, but that's something that I've heard really good things about, is that like the online play with your friends is kind of like the best part. You kind of get really chaotic, running, hitting each other, and there's a whole battle aspect, which is fun. And then off stream, just like on my own, I always find myself playing Mario Odyssey, actually. I played it casually last summer, I know, and then I learned how to speedrun it, any percent. I'm not like amazing at it, but it's such a fun thing. If I have like 10 minutes, I go to any random planet or any kingdom and I just do the any percent run. And that's just like my wind down now, is just doing the any percent run for Mario Odyssey. So one of my favorite games.
Awesome.
Dude, that game is incredible.
So the motion controls and everything, it's so fun. It's so good.
It's legitimately my favorite Mario game. And that
Me too.
says something because Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo held that spot for a really long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good Mario game.
Yeah.
Did you know about the hide and seek balloon mode thing, the multiplayer for Mario Odyssey?
The Luigi's Balloon World or whatever? Yeah, I haven't played it, but maybe I'll have to try.
Yeah, that was...
I tried it once.
Yeah.
It's not the meat and potatoes of that game, we'll say. So.
Yeah, because Breath of the Wild got such great DLC, I was hoping Mario Odyssey would also get really good DLC. And they released that, like the hide and seek balloon thing, and I was like, well, maybe this is them like testing, because it was free. I was like, so maybe it's just them testing the waters and for like a multiplayer thing, like an actual multiplayer, because one person can play as Mario and the other kind of play as the hat, sort of. And then there's that one mode, so it kind of seemed like they were wanting to do something with multiplayer, but they weren't quite there. And they just never did it. And then years passed, and now I'm just like, okay, well, maybe the sequel. I'll have to hold on hope. But what about you, Daniel? What kind of games have you been playing lately?
I'm just gonna say Luigi deserved better than what he got there in Mario Odyssey. But what I've been playing, of course, we actually were talking about this earlier. before the stream started. But well, I've been playing Breath of the Wild, not just streaming it, but also just casually because that eats up most of my free time, the very little free time I have, and as well as my usual Animal Crossing sessions. But other than that, I've actually just been on a really big Metroid kick lately, and so I've been playing Zero Mission and Metroid Fusion, which are both Game Boy Advance games. But they're just really tightly knit experiences. You know, they're just really fantastic. And with Metroid Dread coming out soon, I've just been like crazy excited for. It's kind of been nice to I guess bring myself back up to speed with that. So I've just been really excited for that game to come out because it's the first like new game in like 19 years for the 2D Metroid games, and Samus is just a really cool character with a lot more depth than I think people realize initially. There's just some really good writing in some of those games. So yeah, it's just really well fleshed out characters and lore that a lot of it is through subtext, which is just really cool to see because some games are just very in your face about their stories and things. So it's kind of cool to see a game take a subtler approach, I think. But I'm no speedrunner as well, but Super Metroid is the only game I've ever really attempted to speedrun. And it might be my favorite Metroid game as well. But yeah, I would usher, or I would encourage anyone who's even just the tiniest bit interested to try, I'd say, one of those 3 games just to see. Actually, I wouldn't start with Fusion. It's too hard, but maybe start with Zero Mission or Super Metroid and see if it's your cup of tea, and you might end up finding like your new favorite, franchise. So yeah, there's some games that I've been playing. That was more than you asked for. Sorry, Jesse.
No, it's good. Which one was the remake? Was it Zero Mission?
Zero Mission
was the remake of the first one?
Yes, Zero Mission is a remake of Metroid 1 from the NES from 1986, sorry. And that game needed a remake. Like I have a very hard time playing the original Metroid. It's just in my opinion hasn't aged as gracefully as most of the other games in the series. Do you know what I mean? It's just feels very clunky in comparison, and Zero Mission is a fantastic remake, and I think the biggest attribute, other than making your character more agile and making movement more fluid, is the fact that they just made the terrain a lot more interesting to explore, because the world of the original Metroid is very bland, I would say. Like, just the environments are really bland and samey. There's like probably a dozen rooms in that game, and it's not even a very long game, but there's so many rooms in it that look identical to each other. Not even like palette swaps or different colors, just the same color, same layout, identical rooms. And so it's very easy to get lost because you're just like, what? So was I in the heroes? Was I here already? And so the fact that Zero Mission was able to diversify the world that well without changing too much of the layout and keeping the spirit of the game alive, I think it's just like the pinnacle of remakes. It's certainly up there. So that's where I would usually tell people to start with, because it's the first game chronologically, and also it takes the original game and brings it up to more playable modern standards. So yeah.
Since talking about Metroid, our friend Joey recently uploaded a video for Game Explain, their first Metroid Dread analysis video. So is there anything from Metroid Dread that you are looking forward to, that may be new features or something from previous Metroid games? And
so yeah, actually. Oh, but yeah, sorry, go on. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, while you're talking about that, for Crybunny, I don't know if you're a Metroid fan or played any, but while Daniel's talking about this, if you can think of like 1 or 2 games from E3 that you've seen that you were interested in or that you liked and wanted to try out, then when Daniel's done, you can mention those, and then we can go on to the mailbag. So, Daniel.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Yeah, so I mean, I actually haven't watched that Game Explain video, but I'm just gonna shamelessly plug myself and say that I have a video coming out tomorrow about Metroid as well. So if people are interested in that, or what the heck, what's a Metroid? You can watch that. But um, the thing I'm most excited for is the story of Dread, because uh, sort of since the last 19 years, Metroid Fusion was the last game in the timeline. So every game that they've made between now and then has they've slotted it in between other games.
Sounds
And so this is the
familiar.
first game since then that they're actually putting, past Fusion. So they're actually finally, bringing the story forward past that point. And I don't want to spoil the ending of the series for anyone, but like honestly, when you get to the end of Fusion, it's one of those moments where you're like, what now? Like, where can you go from here? Like, so it's
The
really
Twilight
exciting to
Realm.
kind of see them finally explore those scenarios and see where Samus can, where to go next from there, because uh, a lot of games kind of can end and it's just like, okay, that's it, that's the end, and then everything's going to be fine. But Fusion ends and everything will not be fine. So it's cool to see that. And also there's sort of a horror element added to it, which they introduced in Fusion. In Fusion, it's not really like Resident Evil, but it kind of is like Resident Evil Nemesis, where like you spend the whole game, you're like being hunted by a really powerful enemy in Fusion, and anytime you encounter it, you're no match for it until the very end of the game. So you just have to run or hide from it or escape, and it's so tense. And it's like, this is a Game Boy Advance game that gets your like blood pumping and your heart like beating like crazy, right? And your adrenaline like off the charts. And it's really impressive that they were able to achieve that on the Game Boy Advance that long ago. And so now when I've seen the previews with Dread, there's these 𝐴𝐸 robots that it looks like that's the same sort of idea. Like, you can't actually damage them, and they just go for you. And it looks kind of scary, but like very tense, and I'm kind of intrigued. I'm not really that big into horror games. I'm really not. I'm mostly squeamish, but I'm very curious to see how this will play out in Metroid Dread. So that's probably what I'm kind of most excited about there. Yeah.
All right, Crybunny, what are a couple of games from E3 that you've seen that, whether it's franchises that you've played before or new ones that you've seen that you might be interested in? What were some that you would like to get a hold of and check out?
Yeah, I was so genuinely shocked and excited for Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. I just wasn't expecting that at all. And I just recently got my GameCube fixed, and I've been wanting to play Super Monkey Ball, so I just had like Super Monkey Ball on my brain for the past like month. And it was so funny. They announced it, and I saw so many reacts that were like, "Oh, they saw the banana symbol, and they were like, oh my god, finally, like Donkey Kong!" And then they were like,
That
"No,
was me.
wrong monkey!" Everybody was like, "Wrong monkey!" And I was like, "Yes, Super Monkey Ball!" I'm like the only one who's so pumped. But no, I'm really excited about Super Monkey Ball, and we'll get Donkey Kong at some point. We will. But yeah, that was just like a game that I grew up playing with my siblings that I loved so much. And actually, I streamed it recently on my fixed GameCube, and I learned something that maybe everybody knew except me somehow. Maybe I'm not as big of a like Super Monkey Ball girl as I thought, but I didn't realize that you're moving the platform and not the monkey. That I didn't know that. That's like the point of the game, is that it's a platformer where you move the platform, not the monkey. I still can't conceptualize that. But my world was rocked. Okay, thank you, Daniel, because I didn't know either. And I was like,
I did not know that.
I did not know that either, and it rocked my world. And it's like the premise of the game. It's like you move the platform, not the monkey. And I was like, I've been playing this game pretty well, thinking that I'm moving the monkey. Like, I can't wrap my mind around this. But yeah, I think for the Switch, then, if/since that's true, maybe like tilt controls will be a thing that they introduce. I don't know. That's a good way to move the platform, but that kind of blew my mind. And I asked my siblings, I was like, did you guys know this? And they were like, no. Like, my mind is blown as well. So it made me feel better. But yeah, Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, I'm very excited about. And also just the Mario Party, the Superstar. What's it called? The Superstar? Mario Party Superstar? With all the games from the courses from the N64 and stuff, and some of those old mini games that were so fun. Again, kind of like a nostalgia thing for me. Would play that all the time growing up with my family. So now I can stream it again. So it's kind of a full circle moment for me, which will be fun. But yeah, very excited about those two. And everybody's been talking about Metroid, and like telling me how amazing it is. So I'm feeling very inspired to get into that. So yeah, Daniel, I'll need your recs on which ones to start with.
There we go. Also, the chat here is shocked about the platform revelation.
Okay,
So
thank you, chat.
there
Thank
we
you.
go.
I was like, did everybody know this but me? Like, should I even say this? But no, it's
I never had it, but I had a neighbor who had Super Monkey Ball on the GameCube. I don't know if there's more than one or not, but so I would sometimes play it at their house. But yeah, I did.
I'm
not
gonna have
know
to
this.
play it
This is-
again
this-
with new eyes. I don't know. I'm gonna be worse at it now.
Daniel, speaking of recommendations for Metroid games, would you say Metroid Prime Pinball is the definitive Metroid game?
The best Metroid experience is Metroid Prime Pinball. Absolutely. No, but it's funny that because someone in the chat also mentioned Metroid Prime as well. The Prime games are really good, but they're really different than the 2D Metroid games, because the Prime games are it's the pacing that's different mostly. Prime games are very slow paced. You want to be methodical and thorough, and it's like you're taking your time to scan everything, read your environments, that kind of thing, right? The 2D games are like very action packed, like go go go, so they're really different games. So, but they're both really good, don't get me wrong, both are really good. So yeah, Metroid Prime Pinball is very different from all of those, though. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, did you mention a recommendation for people first starting?
Yeah. Actually, yeah. If you're first starting, I would say start with. It depends if you're like unsure gameplay wise, or if you really want to get into it and want to know like the story.
Mhm.
I would say start with Zero Mission, which is
Zero
a GBA
Mission.
game.
I'm writing this down.
Yeah, and actually, if you have a Wii U, it's on the Wii U eShop for pretty cheap as well.
Mhm.
So it's a good way to do it. And actually, if you do it on the Wii U eShop, you can use save states, which is kind of a lifesaver at some points. So I would definitely start with that, and then go on to like Samus Returns on the 3DS, which is a remake of Metroid 2, and then you could do
Okay,
Super
nice.
Metroid, which is on the Switch, and then Fusion, and then maybe by then Dread will be out, and you'll be caught up on the
Perfect.
story.
I all the
So,
time.
this was not the order I played it in, just so you know. I actually played Prime first, and then I played Super Metroid, and then I did Prime 3, and then Prime 2, and then I went to Fusion, and then Zero Mission, and it was a mess. So don't do what I did. So, that's the moral of that story. Yeah. No,
Well, thank you.
great series though.
I wrote it
Yeah,
down.
so if you like it, feel free to add me, or if you hate it, you can add me as well. So,
I will.
tell
I
me.
will.
If you ever
Tell me
have a
how
thought,
offended you
just if anyone ever has a Metroid thought, just go ahead and message Daniel. He's open to talk.
Yeah, feel free.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hylian Racer, going back to Monkey Ball, says, I've never heard of Super Monkey Ball until Cry played it on stream.
Expanding it.
Mm.
Spreading the good word.
Natsu, a Patreon supporter, says, the first Metroid game I played was Other M. It was okay.
I wouldn't start with Other M because it draws so heavily on Super Metroid, which is Metroid 3. Like all of Other M is like exploring the aftermath of Super Metroid. So if you hadn't played that game, I just feel like you're not going to get as much out of Other M. Do you know what I mean? It's like the whole point of it is it's like it feels a little bit at times like nostalgia pandering, but that's okay. I don't mind nostalgia pandering all that much actually, because I just am a very nostalgic person for video games. So
So I guess, does anyone else have any games from E3 that they would like to give a mention to before we go to the mailbag?
What are yours, Jesse?
Oh, mine.
yeah.
Yeah, you too.
I really liked Mario Party, since it is going to have an actual online mode, which is something that I'm a banana in the chat again. It's the best username ever. Yeah, sorry, distraction. So yeah, it was being able to actually play Mario Party online. It was something that I thought they were just going to add the update to the Mario Party game that we already have, but it seemed like they were making this new Mario Party game, and since they're in the same engine or something, it was basically easy to just take from the new Mario Party game and implement it to the older one. So a quick way to get a boost on sales or something, or test out the servers since they upgraded them. So I'm looking forward to that. Didn't we, when we were all at E3 in 2019, we played a lot of Mario Party at the house or the apartment, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We played our Airbnb Mario Party rounds, and I think we even streamed it at one point.
Yeah,
during E3 that year. It was so long ago now. Feels like a dream.
it
A
was.
life before the pandemic when we could be there in person. Yeah.
So Mario Party was really interesting, especially since it'll be a way to actually play the full game with Daniel or other friends. Or Crybunny. I'm sure she'll be streaming it on her channel or her Twitch. Yeah. So it'll be really cool to be able to go through that and play some stuff. And other than that, Metroid Dread seemed interesting, especially since the video we made a long time ago that kind of ties into it. It was interesting being able to read about it. And it's not often that games are basically canceled and then end up coming back years or a decade later. Everyone wants the original version of Ocarina of Time is a big one that people comment on the channel for us to talk about. So seeing that happen to the Metroid series, which for a Metroid game to come out in the first place is kind of a rare event these days. So for a canceled Metroid game to come out is like, it seems like, aside from just releasing Metroid Prime 4 on the day that E3 happened, it seems like the second best thing that Nintendo could have done for the Metroid fans, especially the ones that were fans of the original 2D Metroid games.
Well, we know Prime 4 is still coming, right? So it's, it's now we get 2 games.
They canceled Prime 4 and gave us 5.
No. No.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So I can't really think of anything else. Yeah, I guess that's it for me. Mario Party will be really fun being able to play it, not just with you guys or friends, but my little brother and my daughter Layla. I think they would all have a lot of fun playing it because of all the different mini games and stuff. Yeah. So I guess with that we can do the mailbag, right? Everybody ready?
Yeah.
All right, so everyone in the live chat, you can go ahead and get your questions ready. It could be Zelda, Nintendo, or almost anything gaming related. You can feel free to ask us if you want to guarantee your question gets answered. At the top of the list, you can become a Patreon supporter, or you can send a super chat, and we will answer it as soon as we can. And if you join our Discord, there is a chat room in the Discord server specifically for the Zelda mailbag. So if you think of one on like Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever, you can just go there, leave it, and not have to worry about remembering it for the live chat. Or if you become a Patreon supporter, you can just send it on there and it automatically gets added to the mailbag. So the first question we have from Natsu, a Patreon supporter, says, Mailbag, you think it is possible for Nintendo to release another trailer at or around the Game Awards? I'm assuming they're talking about Breath of the Wild 2. So
that's a safe assumption.
Yeah, Crybunny. You know what the Game Awards are, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope they do. Is that an answer? Can I say just put that out there? Good vibes?
Yeah.
Manifesting it? We're going to manifest it. It's going to happen.
Legit.
Yes, it's going to happen.
Yeah,
we have willed it to happen now. So it must.
The story I always think of when it goes to the Game Awards and Zelda is when we had Patricia on, the voice actor that plays Princess Zelda. I think it was her. She mentioned that she didn't even know that the trailer was going to come out that day for the DLC. And she was sitting there with the other voice actors and people from Nintendo, and she was watching, and all of a sudden the trailer for the DLC pops up, and she's like, I knew I recorded it months ago, but I didn't know that it was going to be shown off anytime soon. I thought it was going to be way later. So that's the cool story that I always think about with it. And that was one of the biggest things that they had at the Game Awards, and it was kind of crazy because they had 2 different games that were competing for Game of the Year with Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild, which made it even more crazy. And after Breath of the Wild wins, which is the perfect way to promote DLC for a game, is right after it wins the award for like best game of the year. So
That is perfect.
I think.
Imagine if it lost, and then they showed it. Sorry.
Sag.
Yeah, maybe if Mario would have won, we would have got that DLC that I wanted, where they could have been like, look, it's Mario, but now Luigi has balloons.
Oh.
Would have been like if they would have, depending on who won, that was the trailer that they went with. But yeah, I think it's always a possibility, especially since most people assume Breath of the Wild would be coming out early next year instead of late next year. So, which is like the original Breath of the Wild came out around March. So I think it's a definite possibility of seeing it. But I think, never mind. Daniel, hi.
Hi.
I was gonna
could see
go
it
somewhere,
happening
but
Daniel,
okay. Yes.
No, but I can see it happening at the Game Awards. For Breath of the Wild, they showed stuff at the Game Awards a couple of years before, and then the DLC trailer for Breath of the Wild they showed at the Game Awards, and then they've done other stuff. So I could see it happening. I could also see them not showing it and showing us the new Smash fighter, because I think, correct me if I'm remembering this wrong, but I think Sakurai said that the last fighter, the very final DLC fighter for Smash, would be revealed before the end of the year. And so they could forego doing Zelda in favor of doing that. But I feel like there could be room for both, because the Smash reveal trailers are generally pretty short. They could squeeze in 2 trailers with all the things that happened at the Game Awards. But, fingers crossed, because the Game Awards were a little underwhelming last year. So I don't think they did very much there last year. So I could be wrong, right? Just because they have done stuff in the past doesn't mean they necessarily will. But I think it would be great. Like Christ said, let's just manifest. Let's send the vibes.
Vibes.
Make it happen.
Yeah.
So everyone tweet at Jeff Keighley to make sure it happens. No, don't harass. Don't harass people. I'm joking. So yeah. What do you think, Jesse?
Oh, well, it's kind of funny because you mentioned Smash Bros. And anytime that I think of that Smash Brothers Direct thing that they had a few days ago or a week ago, the only thing I can think about with that is the meme everyone made of Sakurai saying that God spoke to him and told him to, like, he didn't know which character to put in Smash Bros. And then God told him to put in that new character. And I'm like, I guess. Like,
I have not seen that.
You haven't?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird, but Sakurai's a weird, cool person.
He's
so,
a weird dude.
Yeah, I think we all mentioned that. Do you want to take the next one from Bree, Daniel? And
Bree,
I think that's all of the Patreon supporters. So, Cry, if you see anyone in the live chat that has a question that you find interesting, you can keep it in mind while Daniel's reading off this one.
Yeah, so Bree of Hyrule asked, thoughts on when in 2022 Breath of the Wild 2 is going to release. I'm curious as to what your opinion is. Smiling face. So I think March or sometime around the first quarter. That's what I think. Maybe near end of first quarter. But I could be wrong. that's maybe me being cautiously optimistic. So, but I really hope March. I think that's best case scenario. So, please, Nintendo. Fingers crossed.
Call me crazy, Daniel, but I think similar to Breath of the Wild being delayed however many months until March 2017 so it could release alongside the Nintendo Switch and the Wii U at the same time. And they mentioned that they kind of held off on releasing it and continued to work on it with the extra time they had. That way they could release it on the Switch as well. And for whatever reason they may have, I feel like they could be doing the same thing again. I think Breath of the Wild 2 would actually be ready to release at the end of this year, but there may be a reason that they're holding off until March next year. So I think like a similar situation is going on, whatever it may be. Yeah. Cry, do you have any idea, or do you think it could come out at the beginning, or do you think it'll be like a holiday game at the end of the year?
I mean, I would want it to come out as soon as possible, but I feel like it's going to be the end of the year. The end of the year, tomorrow. Tonight. Midnight. No, I feel like it'll probably be closer to the end of the year. This is just guessing on nothing, but I feel like they're going to want to, they know the expectations that people have for this game coming off of Breath of the Wild, which is so well received and like so many people's favorite games. So I feel like they're not going to mess around, and they're going to get everything really in top-notch shape before they release it. So
yeah, Breath of the Wild's a really interesting case, because usually when they like reuse the same world or an engine or something, with not just a Zelda game but any game, they're able to make it in like half the time or even faster than it took to make the previous. And they had the world, they had all the characters and everything from Breath of the Wild, and the reason Breath of the Wild was delayed so many times was because they said that they kept on trying to perfect the physics engine, where like you're chopping down trees and the logs are rolling everywhere, you're throwing rocks, jumping off, paragliding everywhere, whatever, like all that stuff is the physics engine. They delayed it once or twice to get it working the way that they wanted to. And like they used one of the funny examples they said was like they would have an issue with like a normal rock, to where you would throw a rock or roll a rock or something and it wouldn't go as far as it was supposed to. So they would fix that, but then it would cause like a tree to behave in a way that like the wind would, like a breeze would come by, and then this tree would just go flying like 1,000 miles per hour across the screen or something, which is what some people still do. Like you see little clips and videos of people glitching the games, yeah, and doing stuff like that. So like they said the reason it was delayed mostly was because they were perfecting, trying to fix the physics engine, and then the final delay was because they were working on it for the Switch and the Wii U. And now they have the world, they have the physics engine perfect, they have all the characters, they have like half the game basically ready. And then a huge portion of the Breath of the Wild 2 that we've seen so far, at least, mostly comes from ideas or concepts that they made for the original Breath of the Wild that we see in like the Zelda books that they had, like creating a champion and stuff like that. And they're just finally being able to use that. Like they had the motorcycle concept art, which was stuff that people were like, oh, they'll never do that. But then when they released the DLC, that was one of the things they added in. And they said that Breath of the Wild 2 even began as additional DLC for Breath of the Wild. So like all this stuff makes you think that most of the game should have already been done or close to being done when they started on it, since it came off of Breath of the Wild and they were already working on it as DLC before they announced it. And then a lot of the ideas was just concept art carried over, or concepts they had for the original. And all of the reasons that they said made Breath of the Wild be delayed so many times or take so long in development, the reason it took 5 or 6 years to come out, was because of all this stuff. And since now they don't have to worry about any of that, you would think it would have taken like 2 or 3 years for Breath of the Wild 2, but it seems like it's taking even longer for the sequel than it did for the original game, even though supposedly they're only working on it for a single console instead of two, like they did the original, and they have all of the like the world and all of the stuff already carried over and ideas and everything instead of starting from basically nothing and building everything from the ground up. So it's really an odd situation. Maybe it's something to where like I don't imagine they would do it because it would be a weird business thing, but with Breath of the Wild 1, after it released, they had the 2 DLC packs that they wanted to add in. So maybe it's a thing where like they want to, like if they have ideas for DLC, then they want to go ahead and put it in the game while they can, instead of releasing it as DLC later on, and then only put ideas they come up with after the game releases as DLC. I don't know, but I think it's an odd situation to see all that stuff. But from what we've seen, like there's the underground areas to explore possibly, and then we've seen the sky areas to explore, so it's not just Hyrule, and it's not just the underground caves like a lot of people thought it would be. It's like 3 different levels basically, and then if they have additional areas, like if you go to the Sacred Realm or wherever, then that's another area to explore. So maybe that's why. I don't know. But I would like to, everyone in the chat, I would like to hear their ideas or thoughts on why Breath of the Wild 2 is taking as long as the original. Anyways, Cry, did you find a question that you'd like to answer?
I found one that I think is interesting. It's kind of long. Let me try to summarize it a little bit, but it's from Willem yesterday in the mailbag. He says, something that has been bothering me for a while with the Breath of the 2 teaser is that no one talks about the whole teaser just being a memory, like with Breath of the Wild 1. I guess, remember, for the first Breath of the Wild trailers and teasers, a lot of the scenes that they showed ended up being memories in the game. So most of us seeing it for the first time thought that it was going to be in the game, but it was actually a memory. So what are some, I actually want to ask you guys, what are some red herrings that are in the trailer for the new one that you think are kind of meant to distract people right now? Or not meant to, but just are distracting people right now? I mean, we kind of talked about it with the 2 links and how they're not showing his face. Is that a distraction that's just going to be nothing in the end? Like, what are some other red herrings that you guys think maybe people are getting tripped up on?
I always think a good indicator is like Link's equipment. So for example, in the first game, all of the scenes in the trailers that were memories, Link just had the Master Sword. And none of the gameplay had him with the Master Sword. They always had like the Traveler's set of things that you see on like the game's box art. And so in Breath of the Wild 2, for example, the sequels trailers, there's like one scene where he has the Master Sword, and that's it basically. And in the last trailer from 2019, he had the sword in pretty much the whole trailer, but we didn't see very much action going on. There was just mostly like posturing and stuff like that, right? So but I think for most of this new trailer, he has a variety of equipment. You know what I mean? He's got like his shield with the dragon head flamethrower thing. Who knows what that is? And he's got, his like full sword and shield and the quiver and stuff like that. So I feel like that for me shows that those are things that are gameplay. Plus, when Link's doing gameplay-like things like paragliding or just running in a straight line, that to me just feels like gameplay. Whereas things like in the first trailer where he's like, I've got a torch and I'm looking at this thing, and it's like, that's obviously a cutscene of some kind, right? So yeah, you kind of have to take like the body language of like what's possible during gameplay and what's going to be more animated because it's a cutscene or a memory. And also, yeah, like the equipment always feels like a big indicator to me. So, but I remember the memory thing from the first game's trailers was something at the time that those trailers came out, I was working at ZeldaInformer.com, right? And myself, along with a handful of the Zelda Informer staff, were picking those trailers apart. And that was one thing that came up constantly was like, in this shot, he has nothing but the Master Sword and no Sheikah Slate. In this shot, he's got this equipment and the Sheikah Slate. And we were kind of able to figure out that way that like, these are some kind of cutscene or some story event, and these are gameplay. And so that's, I think, kind of a good way to look at it. I don't know. So I could be way off base, but just think about the equipment, Link's body language, what he's doing. Yeah, I don't know. But the face thing, I feel like is so insignificant. I just don't think that we don't spend most of the game looking at Link's face. It's always like behind him. So I think the trailer is just shot in a way that's like, this is because that's how we're going to see that game in action, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
For
Yeah.
me, I feel that maybe so most of the stuff that we see in the new trailer looks like it is actual gameplay, aside from like Zelda falling and stuff. The rest of it, like the camera is kind of moving around Link as he's gliding and stuff, or whatever he's doing, and it looks like normal, typical gameplay. But the first trailer from 2019, right? Yeah, 2019
Mhm.
reminds me of
Yeah.
the first trailer they released for the original Breath of the Wild when it was just Zelda Wii U, and they said that was actual gameplay or whatever. And it turned out that it wasn't. And at the time, I didn't think it was either, because in my mind, it was like there's no way the Wii U would be able to make the game look that good, because like the draw distance was like all of Hyrule instead of it cutting off like 20, 30 yards away from Link like it does in the original game. Like you'll see an animal get so far away from you and then it'll just vanish. But in this game, like the distance just went on forever, and it was in like 1080p and a smooth 30 frames, and like the Switch can't even play it like that. So we know the Wii U wasn't playing it. So it reminded me of like just a cutscene they were showing off or something. And I think the same situation was going on with the first Breath of the Wild trailer, where they're just walking through the cave and stuff, because like Link's digging through the elephant, the bags on the elephant, and getting some stuff, and he Zelda's like filling up her water bottles in the river or the creek, and they're walking around holding the torch and everything. And that's not stuff like actions you could really do in gameplay.
Right. Yeah.
So I imagine those wouldn't necessarily be memories, but it would be cutscenes. And then most of the stuff that we've seen in the new trailer would be gameplay. Like I think you would walk around and explore, but then you would get to certain areas where Zelda would start talking or something, and while it's telling you the story, then the camera like pans out and she's filling the bottle up while you're looking through the bag or something. Or she'll say something like, "Oh, it's time to rest. We've been walking all day," or something like that. And then that cutscene will play when you get to the area or whatever situation happens. But yeah, I don't think too many memories is coming around, because now Link basically remembers everything. And although some stuff varied from the actual memories, Age of Calamity kind of filled in most of the gaps from the stuff that Link had amnesia from. So I don't expect too much. Maybe there'll be, I don't even think it'll be memories, but maybe cutscenes of like what happens like maybe directly after Breath of the Wild ends, when Zelda's like, let's go check on King Zora dude.
Right.
Daphne. I wanted to say Daphnis. What's his name? King
Dorfan.
Dorfan, yeah.
Dorfan? Yeah.
Yeah.
Not Daphnis.
He's big fish. He's
Yeah.
big.
Maybe an interesting thing they could do is give us like memories from Zelda. I think maybe that would be an interesting spin on it, instead of memories from Link. That way we could see things from her perspective, although we kind of seen that as well. But anyways, that's my thoughts. What about you, Cry? Do you expect any memories or anything in Breath of the Wild too?
I don't know. Yeah. No, I was very curious to hear your guys' thoughts. I just gut feeling don't think we're going to see more memories, because we kind of covered that in Breath of the Wild. 1, I feel like they're going to want to do something different for Breath of the Wild 2. What that is, I don't know. But yeah, I was watching did I say this earlier? I don't remember, but I was watching the ending again, like the true ending once you finish all the stuff for Breath of the Wild 1, and like Zelda's talking to Link, and like the last thing she says is she's like, I can no longer hear the voice and the sword anymore. Like, I wonder if my abilities just, dwindling after 100 years, and like I'm cool with saying that or whatever. It was just kind of a weird last moment to end on, and I'm just intrigued what's going on with the Master Sword, with Zelda's abilities, what that voice is. That's just where my mind is at right now. I was like, what a weird place to end on.
Yeah.
It's not like we did it, yay! It's like, something's changing, and I don't
haven't thought
know.
about
So,
that.
yeah.
Well, I always felt like I could be wrong about this, but I always felt like that was sort of a moment of closure for Zelda as a character, because like
Mhm.
in the memories, we see like she puts a lot of pressure on herself, and
Mhm.
she's really hard on herself about. Well, she's really hard on herself because her father's
needs a
really hard
spa
on
day.
her about her training, and that she does actually. She really deserves one. But
Maybe that's where she got a haircut. Who knows?
That could be, honestly.
maybe.
And she
Yeah,
is talking.
but,
She's like, we should. Sorry to interrupt you, Daniel, but she's like,
No.
we should go talk to like Mifa's father, and like we should give him some closure. So like closure is like part of the conversation here, and she's like maybe getting it for herself as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and I've always felt like that moment where she's like, I'm okay with that, it's because she's kind of like finally accepting her, her limitations, and her, whether she is or isn't, have these powers and stuff. She's kind of realizing like that's not really what she wanted to do. She wanted to, study and do this research and stuff like that, and she was kind of forced into this role, and she was really hard on herself for not being able to fill it. And then they went and she battled Ganon for 100 years straight with no break, and then helped Link defeat Dark Beast Ganon at the end. Shows up, seals him, and she's like, you know what? Like if I'm okay with that. I'm okay. My power is going away. That's fine. And I don't know. That just feels like that sort of that moment that she needed as a character. But I could just be reading into things. So wouldn't be the first time I've done that. So
No, I like that.
but yeah,
I think
I
that makes
think,
sense. Yeah.
yeah, and but I think you're totally right because the memory's like been there. We've done that, and Link's probably not going to have amnesia again. I hope, right? So yeah, I don't see it being necessary to the sequel at all. I don't know.
I want.
Unless he's still like suffering with like partial amnesia, but just like it gives more like details about his life, not necessarily about him and Zelda. But who knows? I don't know. Because those memories were more like Zelda's story than his own for
Yeah.
the most part. Yeah. Sorry, Jesse. Go
No,
ahead.
I was gonna say, I wonder how annoyed Zelda was, like spending 100 years trying to wake Link up.
Yeah, I don't know. I
And
don't know.
like when he does wake up, she's like, finally. But then he just doesn't remember anything. He's like,
Got amnesia.
yeah.
Well, she expected that, right? She
Did she?
mentioned that one of the memories that when she's putting the sword back,
Oh yeah.
she's like, it's possible that the chamber will deprive him of his memories, but I'm sure he's going to come back here. Something along those lines. But yeah.
Link has amnesia. He just answers the Sheikah Slate. He's like, sorry, just wrong number. Call someone
New
else.
Sheikah Slate. Who dis?
Yeah, I think that's good. We had a super chat earlier. It wasn't necessarily a question, but it was. Still want to get to it. Taker610 with $2 says, if we have to wait to play Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask in 4K on Pro, okay. So,
okay.
Yeah, we
okay with that
we had that topic sort of earlier. I think we agree. I don't know about Cry, but Daniel and I both kind of agree that after Skyward Sword, then maybe you'll possibly be hearing stuff about stuff. Maybe.
That's so vague. But yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. What about you, Cry?
That we'll be hearing stuff about stuff.
No, yeah, maybe. I don't know. But no, with the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, have you played them?
No, I haven't played either ones of those. So, yeah, hoping for them to come out again.
All right. Oh, I thought you had a question, Dan. You're crossing your fingers.
No, that was just fingers crossed. That's all.
If it was a situation where it released on whether it's the Switch 2 or Switch Pro, whatever the next console is, if it was just for that, instead of being like for the Switch and that, how would you guys feel about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, I won't be too upset if it doesn't even come out, honestly. I think it will, but I've played those games so many times that it's like, I'd be okay. But that's just me. Like, I'm not the only consumer here, right? So a lot of people want those games, or I know it's a good opportunity for new people to enjoy those games who don't want to dig out really old consoles. So yeah, but I'd be okay with it either way.
They have they'll have the trailer release, and it'll just be like the cutscenes from Ocarina of Time in HD, the few cutscenes that they had. And I remember the interview with Miyamoto that we were reading, where he said like the game has a lot of cutscenes, or he called them movies in it, but I don't want people to think that it's not a video game. And it's like, why would people think it's not a video game? It's like, I don't want people to think of it as a movie or something.
A movie.
That it's like, remember, it's still a video game. Because it had like over so many minutes of cutscenes, and I'm like, if he only knew the way games were going to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, with I imagine they'll have a trailer that'll just be like the cutscenes in HD, and then Aonuma will come on screen and be like, and one more thing, just for Daniel. And it'll be like Link doing a roll jump, but his jump will be fixed.
His jump will be fixed.
Yeah, because that was one of the things that you didn't like about the 3D remake, was that the way that he jumps, like they changed the animation from the original.
Yeah, because he sticks his legs out in a weird way.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I was watching 𝐼𝐸 play
unnatural.
Twilight Princess earlier, and I hate like when he rolls, he like goes sideways instead of like
because he rolls onto his shoulder.
Yeah,
that's why.
But like I'm so used to like Ocarina of Time or other games where he just rolls straight, but then he's just like, it's weird. But yeah, Daniel, do you have a question? And then while Daniel is getting a question, Cry, if you want to find one, if you can, then that will be our last question for the podcast.
I actually I put two up at the top of the mailbag that were Patreon submitted questions. So
nice.
I don't know if you want to go for those ones.
Yeah, so we can answer those.
Yeah, the first one here is from Justin, who asked, just like how Breath of the Wild had references to all previous Zelda games, do you think Breath of the Wild 2 will actually connect them all and confirm the Dragon Break? So that's kind of a loaded question. And
for those who don't know,
I think
what is the Dragon Break, Daniel?
Yeah, there's some backstory I have to go into that. The Dragon Break is actually a theory that posits that Breath of the Wild is at the end of a converged timeline, in which, earlier in the Zelda timeline, there's actually like a timeline split because of time travel shenanigans. So based on the outcome of time travel stuff, timeline splits, and this theory that I'm kind of the grandfather of, I would like to think.
The grandfather.
Or maybe just the father of that theory. I like to think, at least, is basically the idea that Breath of the Wild is at this convergence in the timeline, just because there's lore things in Breath of the Wild that don't make sense, because there's one bit of lore that, if you actually think about it, it takes place in one timeline, but then they have another bit of lore that's mentioned that actually should be from a different timeline, and that kind of thing, right? So it's kind of confusing that way. So the logical explanation for me is it's this time travel shenanigans. It's a converged timeline somehow. Some people take that to mean that like there's one character that's like, I'm gonna merge the timelines. I've done it, which makes no sense to me, because like I don't think a mortal being could do that, because they would have to be aware of these other timelines to begin with, and how would you be aware of them even? So there's that, but say like a character who's like a deity maybe might be able to do something like that, or it could just be because time's a funny thing, so it could there could be no explanation. But as much as I would like that, part of me thinks that they're not really going to touch too much on it, and they're just going to try and just propel the story forward and not look back so much. And the things that they are looking back on, probably based on things we talked about earlier, probably would more relate to Skyward Sword, which is convenient because that would be before the timeline split anyways. So no matter which timeline it's in, that would still be canon lore. So it's a bit of a convenience, if you will, a convenient way of doing it. But that makes the most sense to me. Yeah, but I could be wrong, or I could be right. They might just not even mention it or acknowledge it at all. They might
Yeah.
give no answer.
Or the
Yeah.
things they add reference for could just be references to Ocarina of Time or Skyward Sword, to where like they don't have to pick one of the timelines. They can just reference before it's split. But for some people that may think, oh well, that's crazy. Why would Nintendo do that? There was in your video you mentioned an interview with Aonuma where he talks about in Majora's Mask. This same thing happens to where all of the different timelines that Link creates when he travels back to the first day in Majora's Mask. At the end of the game, you end up reconnecting all of those to where everyone that you help is saved or helped, instead of just the people that you saved on the last playthrough. So the whole situation already happened in the Zelda series.
Yeah.
And the term comes from
A couple times.
Elder Scrolls.
It does. It's the Dragon Break, that is an Elder Scrolls term, because that was like their way of doing it was in the Elder Scrolls 2.
Yeah, one of the
Daggerfall.
games had a bunch of multiple endings.
Yeah, there's like something like 13 different endings for that game. I can't remember the exact number, but there's like a lot of potential endings. So when it came time to do, the third game, they're like, what do you pick? One as the canon ending, or do you just like not acknowledge it or whatever? So their explanation was that it was this Dragon Break was the term.
Yeah, it all happened.
And all of them happened somehow. That's the answer.
Yeah.
So.
And before we knew it was named Breath of the Wild, there was a bunch of interviews with Aonuma where he said he was taking inspiration from the Elder Scrolls series for Breath of the Wild. So that could just be like open world stuff, or it could be like story stuff. So either way, it all kind of fits. Do you have anything to add to this, Cry? Or do you want to take the next question from Dragonchi?
I think, the timeline gets so confusing. I think it is interesting how they kind of avoided it by spacing out Breath of the Wild like 10,000 years later. Like, we're not going to, what happened there, we're not going to touch. Like, 10,000 years later, that's where we are now. It's kind of how I feel about it too. I'm like, okay, here we are.
Yeah.
It's complicated. It's complicated. But yeah, let's do the next question maybe. From Dragon Chi, if there truly are QOL improvements, quality of life improvements, and features to Skyward Sword HD, why are Nintendo being so quiet over it when they know that this is the one game that needed them the most and is the one thing keeping a lot of people from wanting to pre-order? Does that make sense?
That does. Yeah, like they're not advertising their quality of life improvements as much as they could be, I guess. I couldn't say why. But, like they kind of are. They mentioned the controls being optional, like the motion controls, sorry, being optional, right? Was that in February? I don't know if they mentioned it during E3 at all. Do you guys remember if they even touched on it when they? No, they definitely showed the motion controls, but
they showed the motion controls, but I think that was it. And then maybe they touched on the amiibo. I thought they were going to do something during the treehouse, but they didn't.
Yeah, I really expected some gameplay at the treehouse, but nothing. But it's hard to say why Nintendo does anything.
We've seen like just today there was like 3 or 4 different Skyward Sword trailers come out. Some were like 30 or 40 seconds, others were a couple of minutes. So maybe that's just what Nintendo's going to do, and you just see any updates or anything that they want to talk about just mentioned in a video or a trailer or something that they release later on. Because I doubt they would release everything they're going to be doing for Skyward Sword or all the trailers they have today, even though they did release 3 or 4. So maybe it'll be spaced out. Like on the official Twitter page for Zelda, like every single day they've been releasing like a new screenshot that has information about it. So maybe like it'll get to where it's like a week or 2 away from the game releasing, and then it'll start to go into more detail. Instead of explaining about the characters and stuff like they have been, maybe they'll start going into actual gameplay mechanics, because they know the closer they get
Right.
is when more people are going to be interested in looking for that kind of information. So instead of giving that information now, when most people who want to know about Skyward Sword already know most of the stuff that it's going to bring, where the closer it gets, the casual people are going to be wanting to look into it. So they're saving most of that information for closer to it. That's my thoughts.
I have a
Yeah.
thought. Just thinking about Nintendo's branding. I've never worked at Nintendo, but I've known I won't say who, a couple of people who have, and like just as far as like doing demoing and stuff like that goes. And from my understanding about Nintendo, and just thinking about their approach to when they're like demoing games at like E3 or doing Treehouse presentations, I find they kind of have a stance where they try and really they really want to stand behind their product. You know, they want to, you know, they even when you think about like interviews with Reggie where he's asked about games or he's asked about like, oh, this thing sucks, why? And they kind of double down and stand by their product, which is I think a good business sort of practice, right? Like you don't want to throw your own game under the bus. So I think that might be why they're not mentioning too much quality of life improvements, because they're just trying to they're not trying to be like, oh, we fixed it. We fixed a broken game. You know, they're just trying to show you like this is our great game that we have. If that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah, it's just sort of a way
Yeah.
of framing it, you know? Because if you're like, oh, well, we fixed all of this stuff, it kind of gives an impression that there was something wrong with the game to begin with, which, I mean, it's not perfect, but it is a great game. But there is room for improvement, always, right? Even with our favorite games, like Koroks. So there's I don't know. That's just my thought is like that might be why they're not being so like public about changes, just putting it in maybe like text on their website or whatever. But I could be off base here. I'm just kind of guessing at this point. So
Yeah.
it's a
And
thought.
going on what you said, the other thing that comes to mind is like with Wind Waker and Twilight Princess with those remakes, they didn't do something like that where like we fixed all this stuff. It was just like, oh, well, we thought this one thing could have been fixed. And they act like it's just this one thing, to where they make the sailing faster in Wind Waker, where they make the tears of light that you have to collect in Twilight Princess instead of like 16 or 18 or however many there are. There's like 12 or something. So they make these segments that a
Right.
lot of
I
people
don't
thought was
think
tedious a
they-
lot shorter.
I don't think they even mentioned that in the marketing beforehand, though. Like that was just something that we kind of learned because we were playing the game.
The Tears
after
of
it came
Light?
out. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, I don't remember them advertising that like had been reduced beforehand, but I could just be wrong. So
Oh,
it's happened before.
yeah. Cry, do you have any thoughts?
I mean, maybe for people who haven't played it yet, they, you know, like you were kind of saying, Daniel, they don't want to like harp on this was bad here. Like they just want to, they might not even notice that something is different or has changed. People who haven't played it yet, so like why even say anything, sort of thing. But I think, I mean, the biggest thing would probably be the motion controls. I feel like that's a very divisive thing for people, even having never played Skyward Sword. Everybody, I have feelings on motion controls, so I think that was the one that they wanted to address right on. And then I think that was probably the main one for people, that you don't have to necessarily use the motion controls. You can if you want to, but you don't have to, so don't let that deter you from the game.
Good answer. I think that's everything. Do you have anything else to add, Daniel?
No, that is a good answer actually, because motion controls are really divisive. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's a very polarizing subject, and I think when done right, like I think Breath of the Wild's use of gyro aiming is like perfect. I think that's like flawless motion control utilization. Um, whereas like say now we're circling back, Metroid Prime 3 specifically on the Wii had very good motion controls because it's like basically just a pointer for your aiming, which was fine because you could also still like target enemies and lock on. But then it just had things where like, okay, you want to open this door. In most games, you just like go up to the door and open it. But in that game, they're like, okay, well, you're gonna go up to the door, you're gonna stick out your hand, you're gonna turn, you're gonna pull the handle now, like just weird things like that. It just felt very like too heavy-handed. Do you know what I mean? So that's a thought. Oh, we got a super chat. The Manboy Cave, $10 or $9.99, $10. The Manboy Cave says, I joined late. Welcome, new girl. That's you, Cry.
Thank you.
Welcome. If you answered this, then skip it. But what are the chances Nintendo lied about the 35th anniversary and there's more to come? We did mention that a bit earlier, right, Jesse?
Sort
Talked
of.
about that. Right? I'm not crazy.
We think
Yes.
you may hear more about Zelda after Skyward Sword releases. And similar to Aonuma saying that there's not going to be a second Switch, and then we got the Switch Lite, Skyward Sword HD, they're not working on it, they have no plans for it, and then it's announced. Majora's Mask, they say they don't have plans for it, it's announced. They're not going to release a second version of the 3DS, they release 5 or 6 different versions of the 3DS, and all of the other stuff that Nintendo says that they weren't going to do or they had no plans for, and then a month or two later ended up doing the same thing that they said they were not going to be doing. It's not necessarily lying, it's just not wanting to reveal the surprise before it's ready to be revealed. So that's what I think's going on. So yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Manboy Cave, for the super chat.
So I think that's everything. Yeah, so there's a little over 100 people still watching. So for everyone that's watching, like Manboy Cave, who may not know exactly who you are, or they were not here at the beginning whenever we first started, Crybunny, who are you? What are you doing here?
Who is this new girl?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody who didn't hear this before, but I am Crybunny Girl. I am a Nintendo variety streamer on Twitch. I stream a bunch of Zelda games, Pokemon, Mario. So that is me. And thank you guys for having me on the podcast tonight.
And do you have anything special coming up that you would like people to check out? Usually people have like a YouTube video that they've been working on that they want to mention, but your videos are like, the ones that I've noticed on your YouTube channel are like more behind the scenes or focused on your Twitch.
Yeah. I have like a stream setup video that I'm working on right now. I moved apartments recently. Last time I was on the podcast, different background, new apartment now. So yeah, keep an eye out for an updated stream setup video. And yeah, once Skyward Sword comes out, I've never played it before. So if you want to watch a newbie play Skyward Sword, I will be playing that on my Twitch channel when it comes out in a couple weeks.
Awesome. And I just
don't spoil it, guys.
Oh, yeah.
When you go watch it,
no
don't
backseating.
backseat game. Don't spoil it.
Yes.
That's all.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jesse.
No, I was just going to say I posted a link to her Twitter, and I posted a link to Twitter and her Twitch earlier in the chat.
Thank you.
I'll put it in the description after the video ends. So, where you can just go to her Twitter, and I'm sure she has links to Twitch and everything on her Twitter.
Yeah.
But Daniel, a little birdie told me you might have a video coming out sometime tomorrow. Maybe.
Oh, I do. Yeah, tomorrow morning, my new video drops on my channel. So everything is Capt Burgerson, CaptBurgerson. Like there's a captain, and it is a burger, an actual burger, and that was my dad. So that's look forward to that on my YouTube channel tomorrow. It's all about Metroid. It's everything you need to know about Metroid before you play Dread. Although I'm gonna give you a heads up, there are spoilers in the video, but there are also spoiler warnings before those spoilers in the video. So there is that. But it's I'm pretty proud of how it turned out. There's a lot of flashy, fancy titles and stuff. And otherwise, I stream on my YouTube and my Twitch actually, but don't tell Twitch that. And I've been playing Breath of the Wild every Wednesday. Every Wednesday is Breath of the Wednesday. And also been playing some Metroid. I just started a file on Zero Mission last week because that's sort of the start of all things Metroid. So, it's been neat because a lot of people have been kind of popping in and being like, "I'm curious about this game." So there's a lot of hype around Metroid lately. So, but I swear those aren't the only things I do. Just mostly Zelda, though. Let's be honest. Yeah, that's all I have to say about me. But Jesse, who are you?
My name is
Tell us about
Daniel.
yourself.
You can find me at Captain
What?
Ferguson. No, I was thinking it's kind of odd that like your name's Captain Bergerson. You're a vegetarian.
Yes.
But instead of a burger, the big
Yes.
joke on the podcast is bananas, not burgers.
I love bananas though as well.
Yeah.
Like that part's not even a joke. that's just the
Yeah.
truth.
Did
yeah,
we have
yeah.
the banana
those-
thing before we went to LA the first time? Or was that when it started?
I think that was the start of the joke. But I think the reason that it started was because like we had gone to the store to buy things, and I did legitimately buy like a lot of bananas. So there's like the joke is rooted in truth. Yeah.
All right. I am Jesse. YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, everything you can find is /GameOverJesse, so it should be easy to find. Thank you all for watching. Yeah, have a great night, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Bananas.
Yeah. Bananas.
Bananas.